Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Kinetic Rugby League channel. On screen is a recap of last week's predictions. I've also left up a recap of the overall total percentage on the year and what percentages I'd get whether I'm correct or incorrect with this grand final prediction. As always, let me know your predictions in the comment section down below. But let's get on with the grand final predictions for this week. So, for the 2025 Super League Grand Final, we have Hull Kingston Rovers taking on the Wigan Warriors. Starting with form, Hull KR have won 4 in their last 5 games. Wigan have won 5 in their last 5 games. They've actually won 6 games in a row. For player availability, Hull KR will be without Jared Warrior-Hargreaves due to suspension. And for Mickey McAlorum, he's to be confirmed later in the week. I've got a feeling he'll be in the 21-man squad, but whether he'll make the 17, I'm not too sure yet, so we'll have to see. For Wigan, based on who we would assume would make their 17, I think they'll be at full strength. Based on what I can find on suspensions and injuries, I think they'll be at full strength. Now, for the details of this game, I want to start with the issues for both sides. Starting with Wigan, I think one area that could be an issue is probably errors and wayward passes inside the midfield. Now, we saw about 7 or 8 weeks ago when they played KR, I think it was at home, Wigan were at home in that one, they were quite disconnected. They didn't have Ben French back at 6 yet. I think it was the week after he came back in. They were a bit disconnected in the spine. KR's defensive line speed was great towards the edges inside the midfield, and they really disrupted Wigan's offense. There was a lot of wayward passes that went into touch, and there were some errors as well. I think KR can really draw that out of Wigan again this time around. The positive for Wigan on that aspect is that since French has been back in from the game after that, the cohesion and execution when moving the ball inside the midfield from Wigan has been on a different level. It has stepped up massively. So it's going to be a lot harder to draw those errors and those wayward passes, but it's still a potential that KR can draw it out. Another issue that Wigan had, which they have improved massively, a few months ago, when they went through that dip in performance, what I saw was a real lack of effort from the middles. A lot of them didn't look arsed carrying the ball. There was a real lack of effort, trying to show any real physicality, any real presence, trying to punch holes through the middle, get quick play the balls, a real lack of effort. And you kind of saw that defensively as well. On their own goal line, there was a couple tries that they conceded through the sort of middle of the park, the middle third, where the forwards just weren't really putting in the shift. Their attitude, the discipline, just wasn't at a high enough level that we expect for Wigan anyway. But since, I guess, that loss to KR in the last 7 or 8 weeks, I've not seen a shred of evidence that the forwards are lacking intent or effort. They've been on it. They've been well disciplined, well drilled, and we've seen, Dupree, I guess you could say, was dropped a couple times to 18th man, but when he's been back in, he's showed that effort again. Mago's been huge off the bench all season long, and with Thompson back in, I think Wigan have looked a little bit like a different beast as well. So he's been a huge inclusion to this side. So in terms of the potential errors for Wigan, good news for them. I think they're in a position to counter or at least cover those bases a little bit. Now for Hull KR and their issues, I think there's 3 that have started to persist a bit for about 6 to 8 weeks. One of those is errors. There have been a lot of errors from KR recently. Another area is missed tackles, and another that's crept in a bit more recently is ill discipline. And KR, they've been known all year for their just being well disciplined and getting the basics done correctly and done well. But errors, you can't keep turning over the ball inside the midfield or enemy territory. You can't keep missing tackles, especially against a team like Wigan that has French in field that would love to do some damage by themselves in broken play. And you can't keep, trying to keep Wigan pinned back inside their 30, 20, or even 10, and then give away a penalty, which they've done a few too many times recently to let them march up the field for free. With a fresh set of 6 inside the midfield, you just can't let them do it. So if they can either really clean up one area and maybe slightly clean another one, or in little bits here and there, be slightly better off, that will go a long way in a game like this, where grand finals usually bring out a lot of the basics, just going back and forth, both sides sticking to a process, kicking to the corners, and trying to be disciplined defensively off the back of it. So if they can clean those up, it'll be huge for the basics, huge for discipline, and I think it'll stand them in better stead. So they need to clean those areas up. But for the kicking game next, with Smith, he's basically going to be the only one doing it for Wigan. French will do it from time to time. I think when Wigan are sort of 30 or 40 metres out down the right edge, French will just go for a chip in towards the back right corner. So he's fine with doing that. But typically it will be Harry Smith doing most of the kicking all across the park. Whereas with KR, there's a sort of fair mix between Lewis, May and Morg. Most of it I think will be from Lewis, which is what they like to do. Most of the time this season they've been able to dominate through the middle, or at least at the very minimum compete. And then they'll either be kicking from their own 40, the halfway line, or opposition 40, and Mikey Lewis just chips it towards the back left corner, and then they kind of stay on a usual process from there. So with the kicking, I think Smith is better equipped for distance and accuracy, and I think he's likely to be more consistent with it over 80 minutes because of the fact that he's got more of that experience in his game. And Mikey Lewis, May and Morg, they're used to kicking from halfway or the opposition 40 and not having to worry too much about the long-range kicking. So I think Smith's got a bigger boot and is a bit more accurate with it as well, and has a bit more variety in his kicking game. I think the major help for Mikey Lewis, at least, for KR, is that, okay, maybe it's not as consistent throughout 80 minutes, but I think there is definite potential to see a spark or a bit of magic somewhere, whether it be a 20-40 or a 40-20, or even if it's like short-range kicking, a chip over the top, a chip and chase, a grubber kick. So it's not just the long range or kicks in general play. I think there's a little bit more magic that can come out of Mikey Lewis, but overall, in terms of general play and general consistency with kicks, Smith is probably going to be more reliable in this game. So with it being the grand final as well, both teams will likely get into the back and forth grind. So who's going to be a potential game breaker? Who can do something by themselves when maybe both sides are a little bit timid, they don't want to risk too much or spread the ball too much inside the midfield? Well, of course, for KR, you've got guys like Morg, Hiku, Gildart, Burgess, Litton through the middle. If you get him quick play the balls or offloads as well, he'll do a lot of damage through the middle. And then, of course, Mikey Lewis. I would say with Lewis, if KR find themselves in good territory early on in the game, I think have a lot of your plays just go through Mikey Lewis. Don't worry about shape. Don't worry about kicks to the corners. I'd say a lot of the times on last tackles, just let Mikey Lewis have a go. Inside the 10, don't worry about anything else. Let him get into a rhythm. Let him kind of assess that defensive line of Wigan's. Look at some ticks that he could maybe exploit later in the game. Get him into a rhythm. Give him that confidence. Ball in hand nice and early. And maybe could be one or two moments early on where he either goes in with a try, comes up with an offload maybe, or at least turns over the ball right in front of the try line, because he's so elusive and can basically get to the try line on most occasions. So I'd say don't worry too much about forcing it. If you can get up the field, just let Mikey Lewis get into a rhythm. But for game breakers on the side of Wigan, you've of course got Field, Wardle, Marshall, French especially as well. Leeming later on in the game I think will be important. I think in terms of individual quality on the ball, you'd lean more towards Wigan just with French and Field because they are insane talents. But there's a few final things that I wanted to get onto. One of them is defence. Now, if we look at Wigan's defence recently, in the last 6 games, which they've won, they've conceded 4.6 points per game on average. That's it. I think it's like 2 against Wakey. It was 4 in the week after, 4 possibly the week after that, and then 6, 6, and 6 again. Like, it's insane. They've not conceded double digits in the last 6 weeks, I'm pretty sure. 4.6 points per game, that is ridiculous. And the week before that, they only conceded 10 against KR. They weren't great, but defensively, it's only 10 against KR. Whilst KR defensively, so Wigan have conceded 28 in their last 6 games. KR have conceded more than that in their last 2. And in the game before that, they conceded exactly 28. So defensively, there's a major disparity between Wigan and KR right now. So that could be a potential issue for KR in this one. But in terms of how I think this game could potentially go, of course, as it's grand final, Super League grand finals are often just a lot of back and forths. Getting to the end of the kick, finding the corners. I trust Wigan a little bit more. I don't think either side will allow each team to get into their opposite half. They'll restrict them to their own 30 and 40, and I think Smith will have an easier time getting the ball further downfield and switching up the kicks as well, making it tricky for the back 3 receivers. So I think Wigan, over time, might be better off with the field position battle, and that brings Field into the game a little bit more. And I think given the effort and the quality that the forwards have shown for Wigan in the last few months at this point, I think they'll do a decent job being able to restrict KR inside their own territory for longer periods. KR will have their moments further down the field, but with how strong Wigan have been defensively, I don't know if they'd even concede a single try again this week. I'm going to assume that KR will find a try because I think they're better equipped to score one this time compared to last year. But with the amount of errors, the amount of missed tackles, I think KR could be turning the ball over a bit too much. Not a ridiculous amount, but maybe just a little bit too much. I think with the missed tackles, if you're not getting a hold of French or Field, or even Wardle, or Kieran, or Leeming, O'Neill, if you're not getting a hold of them, or the forwards as well, if you're allowing them to get offloads, they're just going to eat up more and more metres. And then with the ill discipline, Wigan could potentially march up the field. They could, but you don't want to be gifting them territory inside the midfield with a fresh set of 6. And I think with the issues I mentioned earlier for both sides, Wigan's kind of cleaned theirs up, whereas KR has persisted, their errors have persisted for the last few weeks at this point. And I think you're gifting territory to French and Field, and they will make them pay for it. I think there is a slim chance that Wigan dominate, like beyond belief. I think there's a slim chance of that happening. KR can win this one, but they have got to get the basics right. They have got to actually elevate to a different level, because Wigan are on a different level, and offensively they've got to be a lot quicker than they have been. You know, they're effective when spreading the ball. They're always, typically clean, but they've got to be actually a little bit quicker than what they've shown recently in offense. And I think Wigan defensively are well equipped to deal with it. I think they'll be... Actually, I've got a feeling they'll be okay in this one. And I don't think they'll be challenged too much over the course of 80 minutes. So for prediction, I'm going to go with Hull Kingston Rovers 8, Wigan Warriors 20. So there you have my final predictions video for the Super League 2025 season. As always, if you guys have your own prediction, please let me know in the comments section down below. I'd love to know who you guys think is going to take the biggest trophy of the Super League season. But if you enjoyed, feel free to leave a like. It does help to get the video out there to more people. Subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with more Kinetic Rugby League content. And if you'd like to become a member, you can do by clicking the link in the description down below, as memberships will be switching from YouTube to Patreon. And over on Patreon for next season, I'll be doing predictions and fantasy leagues for both Super League and NRL, with a bunch of behind the scenes content and monthly giveaways as well. So get on over there for either post-season, pre-season, or next season, whenever you fancy. But if you want to get on over there, check out the perks. The link is in the description down below. But thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.